Good afternoon and good morning, wherever you might be. Thank you for joining us. I am Tomiko Dagan, Senior Vice President of the Universal Peace Federation USA and the U.S. Coordinator for the Interreligious Association for Peace and Development, in short, IAPD USA. Hosting the 34th monthly IAPD Forum brings me joy today. In November 2017, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon founded IAPD as a project of the Universal Peace Federation, which is an NGO in general consultative status with the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. The IAPD Peace Forum brings a significant effort from UPF as a people-to-people approach to peace and reunification on the Korean Peninsula. The Armistice of the Korean War marked its 70th anniversary this year. So we hope this forum will be a source of wisdom, encouragement, and commitment to advance together toward peace in the Korean Peninsula. We are pleased to have with us today distinguished speakers. I now would like to invite Dr. Michael Jenkins, the President of Universal Peace Federation, International, and the Chairman of the UPF North America. Dr. Jenkins, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice President Duggan. We're here to also acknowledge the 70th anniversary of the Armistice between North and South Korea. It wasn't the end of the war, but it was the end of hostilities and a truce, an armistice where we have agreed not to fight. And it's been 70 years since that time. And we are just really grateful that the war didn't break out again. But at the same time, our founder, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, and millions of others in Korea who had to leave the North and come to the South, have never been able to see their families for 73 or 74 years when they had to flee North Korea. We want to end this war, and that's the whole idea of the Universal Peace Federation. We want to see peace in every country and between all people. We would really love to be a part of this effort that Bishop Stallings is going to be one of the leaders of, to march from the DMZ across the DMZ and then to the other side, and join in North Korea, get on some buses and go to Pyongyang to have a conference. We're looking forward to doing that. One of our leaders has been just outstanding in this effort to bring peace by teaching the principles of peace, and that is Archbishop George Augustus Stallings, Jr. He's the patriarch and founder of Amani Temple. He knows our founders very, very well, traveled all 50 states doing the work of peace and also education as a faith leader. As an archbishop and now patriarch of his movement, he has many churches throughout the United States, and also he has churches affiliated throughout the world. He understands the principles of peace, which means you have to love your enemy. So I'd like to welcome at this time Archbishop Patriarch George Augustus Stallings, Jr. of Amani Temple.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins, and to all of our distinguished panelists who are on this platform today. I want them to know that it is indeed an honor and a privilege for me to join them on the stage, and even more so to learn from them, because I know that they're very sagacious and well knowledgeable in what is going on the Korean Peninsula. We call it the land of the morning call. I remember when I first went to South Korea some 22 years ago, I was simply fascinated by that country, and particularly to go to the 38th parallel, the DMZ, and to see in stark reality the division between those two countries, people of one nation, one tongue, one culture, and families separated and divided by a line that disrupted their connection with each other. I was deeply moved by it. As a member of the American Clergy Leadership Conference, Dr. Garrett, that organization is a coalition of Christian ministers in the United States of America committed to rebuilding the family, restoring the community, renewing the nation and the world. We had an opportunity several times a year over the past 22 years as an organization to visit South Korea and to go to the DMZ. And of course, our longing has always been to cross over that line and head north and embrace our brothers and sisters. I come from deep religious roots, and my base is spirituality. So you have to forgive me for being limited in my views. Perhaps you may say in my naivete. When you look at such a world complex situation as the reunification, a peaceful, nonviolent reunification of the Korean Peninsula, particularly as we see in the news now that the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, is now in Russia, and all the news reports, at least that we've heard in the United States, that it's going to be, while it may not be a quid pro quo, there is going to be some kind of exchange of weaponry that North Korea has in exchange for technology that Russia has. None of those concepts, are ideal situations that we would want. We don't want to engage in the acceleration of war, but we want to truly be one universal family under God. So my naivete is perhaps rooted in my whole concept that I truly believe that there is a commonality that we all possess as brothers and sisters, one universal family under God. I know we don't look at each other all the time like that. That's probably not even within the range of our thinking, but dealing with religion day in and day out, I've come to realize that if there's going to be a reunification of North and South Korea, if it is really going to live out its label to be the land of the morning calm, then we're going to need something more than direct, hardcore engagement. We're going to need, hardcore power. We're going to need soft power. We're going to need people-to-people engagement. And so that's what I've been involved in the 22 years that I've been going to South Korea, to be able to not only know the people of South Korea and their longings to be reunited with their families in the North, but also to know that I've heard testimonies of persons who have escaped from North Korea and come to South Korea or other parts of the country, and how they long to see this reunification. I am convinced that ultimately the commonality that we see that exists among us as members of the human race will be that burning desire that will have us desire what we want for ourselves to also want for others. That Martin Luther King Jr. has been very instrumental, his teachings in my own formation in life. And he often says that, what affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And we would never think that what's going on in North and South Korea has any effect whatsoever on us, no less indirectly. But if we are universal people, if we have gotten outside of the United States and seen how other people live, if we treasure and value our own freedom, our ability to go back and forth freely without any type of government intervention that would seek to prevent us, particularly if we have a legal passport, then we realize that there are people around the world today who do not have that access, who do not have that choice. It makes you want to do whatever you can to see that happen. Now, I believe that prayer changes things. We were taught from the earliest times of our Christian formation, if we're Christians and perhaps even non-Christian, we're taught the same thing, that prayer changes things. And I believe that for most of my adult life. But somewhere I had an epiphany that helped me to realize that prayer not only changes things, but prayer changes people who can change things. So my real concern now is, how do we get to the heart of world leaders? How do we penetrate the mind and soul of a person like a Kim Jong-un, to help us to realize that what he is and his father and his grandfather have done over the decades is not bringing about the kind of peace that we need in our world today, but that somehow there has to be some give and take action. And I'm not a diplomat, I'm not a politician, I'm not a judge. So the only thing that I can utilize is what I know best, my spirituality. So every day in my prayer, I'm praying for the peaceful reunification of North and South Korea. But I'm even praying more so that we will put the issue of the peaceful reunification of North and South Korea on the front burner. I don't see that I don't see that happening in the United States. Maybe I'm living on the wrong side of town or in the wrong city, but I don't hear us saying as Americans that we are concerned about the reunification of North and South Korea. I know we focus a lot on the Middle East. I know we're really engaged in this conflict between Russia and the Ukraine right now, but I don't see where North and South Korea is on the agenda of our government, our politicians, or even our churches. So I try to take what I have, to take the church, and I say to our people, we have to be concerned about what's going on around the world. Yes, we can act locally, but we must think globally. I have to have a concern for the people of North and South Korea. That's the passion that I have, that I will give my life, I will expend my energies to work for peace. So the last thing I have to say is I'm motivated by that song, and I know our brother Dale Garrett knows the song, Let There Be Peace on Earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be with God as our heavenly parent. Brothers and sisters are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now with every step I take. Let this be my solemn vow to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. And I think when we begin with each other, when we begin with ourselves, when we look in the mirror, we will see in each other a desire for them to possess what we have. So I want to thank you for listening to a preacher, listening to a minister who is naive, who is not in a position where I can just rattle the saber, or which is not what I want to do, or make a lot of noise. It's quiet noise, people to people engagement. And I believe as I come to know the Koreans and they come to know me somehow, and keep praying, somehow that's going to make a difference in the long run. And lastly, I said lastly, preachers always say lastly about 4 or 5 times. Last thing, I have come to work with a person by the name of Dr. Listen to this, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, who is ascribed as the mother of peace, who, along with her husband, made inroads in Pyongyang, in North Korea, that I have not seen any other person do in the past 50 years. They have the heart of Kim Jong-un. Mother Moon has the heart of Kim Jong-un. Every year when we celebrate the passing of her loved one, Kim Jong-un sends a huge bouquet of flowers. There is definitely a close connection. And I believe that if we're going to see peace, the peaceful reunification of North and South Korea is going to be because Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, the mother of peace, has expended all of her energies and effort to work for that peaceful solution. So I think it is in our best interest to get to know this mother of peace and ask, how does she keep on keeping on with that endless hope in our heart that there will be that reunification? And when it happens, I want, just like you, we all want to be a part of that peaceful reunification of North and South Korea, the land of the morning call. Thank you, Dr.
Oh,
Jenkins.
Archbishop, thank you so much.
Amen.
I have been with Archbishop for over 22 years, and I've seen him in all kinds of situations in the Middle East and throughout the world, but I've also seen him speaking before the heads of state and also the parliamentarians and people from the military, and they all are inspired and uplifted when they hear his message, because he's a great man of peace, but also he brings such dignity and understanding on how we can work together. I've seen him in very tense conflict situations where he doesn't get tense. He stays calm and also ministers to people. And but firm. He's not soft. He's strong. But like he always says in his sermon, I'm not going to be long. I'm going to be strong. And people love it. We really are grateful for your leadership, Archbishop. I envision that day coming in a short time.
I hope.
The Berlin Wall suddenly collapsed from the weight of the hearts of the people that would no longer live under tyranny, and even the leaders didn't want to hold the people back, and that's when that wall broke. And we see that kind of thing, and that's going to happen, we believe, with North and South Korea. So I do see you leading the way. I can't wait. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. We're going to take Dale Garrett with us too. I want him to be right there on that front line.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Very good. Our next speaker today, Mr. Lawrence Baer, has 40 years of experience in management and entrepreneurial business development, and also in nonprofit organizations. He helped launch an International Economic Institute, and for 10 years, he served as the executive assistant to its 3 chairmen, Honorable Robert B. Anderson, former U.S. Secretary of Treasury, and to Secretary Anderson's 2 successors, Senator Eugene McCarthy and Prime Minister Sir Robert Muldoon of New Zealand. Lawrence enjoys songwriting. He's a prolific songwriter, and we're going to enjoy his peaceful music shortly. He has produced 3 CDs, which has earned numerous awards, and has received a Grammy nomination as a contributor to the Del McCoury Band's 2009 release of Family Circle. Lawrence grew up in a Jewish family. His father and grandfather were both medical doctors in Niagara Falls, New York. Most of his paternal grandmother's family were killed in the Holocaust in Germany. Wow. His mother's 2 brothers were both extremely involved in World War II. Her eldest brother worked in the Manhattan Project at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and her other brother was a fighter pilot in Europe and became the director of OSS for Yugoslavia during the war. Lawrence has been married since 1979 and his couple participated in the 1982 blessing at Madison Square Garden. They have 5 children, all married, with 10 grandchildren. Mr. Lawrence Baer, welcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jenkins. And thank you, Archbishop Stalling. I really appreciated your perspective. And I too look at this from a spiritual perspective, even before looking at it from a diplomatic or some kind of a technological perspective. And I'd like to, in my presentation, ask the question, if there isn't something that needs to happen in America, actually in America, it's kind of counterintuitive, but in order for the Koreas to unite, is there something that has to happen in America after which that unity will happen quite spontaneously? That's my unique perspective. I'm not representing any organization in this, but I'd like to offer this presentation. So I'm going to share my screen. Here we go. And then I'm going to put the beginning. Oh, I have to hide this silly thing. Now let's try that. Up. So this is God's providence and the unification of Korea, which fundamentally involves, I believe it fundamentally involves reversing the global corruption of God's 3rd blessing to mankind. That's my perspective. So God's the Alpha and the Omega. God's alive now in these last days of his providence and has been actively working every minute since the dawn of history. And at the beginning of human history, before Adam and Eve were mature, Satan tempted them through their physical bodies, and they fell. God designed man's physical bodies to have dominion over the physical world. Because of Satan's temptation, he came to dominate mankind's physical body, and through our physical bodies, Satan came to dominate the entire physical world. Even St. Paul, one of Jesus's greatest disciples, lamented Satan's domination of his body. So God blessed Adam and Eve with three blessings: be fruitful, multiply, and have dominion. Fruitful signifies spiritual maturity. Multiply signifies a God-centered marriage and family. Dominion, that's the key one here for this presentation. Dominion signifies God-centered stewardship of the creation. No one ever fully manifested God-centered dominion over the creation, which is to be built on the first two blessings. Since we never matured as individuals, we think about material and wealth in very self-centered ways. Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon wrote in her memoir of peace, "Evil is acting for selfish gain, whereas goodness is to serve others and let go of the memory of having done so. When we give and forget, true love flourishes." The fallen world programs us to think that when we give something away, it's gone. And true love, however, the more we give, the more we receive. When our mindset changes from wishing to receive love to wishing to give love, the world of peace will be at hand. Satan tempted Jesus with three temptations. The third and final temptation was related to material wealth and dominion. Bow down to me, and I'll give you everything. And Jesus rebuked Satan and defeated Satan on an individual level. But tragically, Satan invaded Israel and prevented Jesus from offering that nation to God 2,000 years ago. Jesus has been working since his resurrection to victoriously offer a nation to God that could represent the entire world. That nation is America. We're now living in the final stages of the providence, where we must restore all that was lost to Satan. God's entire providence has been based on the model of Jacob, who was the first victor and who laid the foundation for God's chosen people. God wanted Jacob and Esau to unite, centering on God's representative, namely Jacob. Jacob prepared his entire life for one moment of victory. Then, at a very advanced age, he set out to achieve his life's purpose, namely his unity with Esau. But before they could unite, Jacob had to fulfill three important steps, which Jesus spoke about 2,000 years later. First, Jacob had to overcome his fear of death and, in fact, be willing to die in order to win his brother's heart. Second, Jacob had to recognize that his blessings were not for his own sake, but rather for his brother. And he had to give up all attachments to them and offer all of them to his brother. And finally, Jacob had to win victory over the angel. On those foundations, Jacob was able to win Esau's heart, and he came face to face with God when he embraced his brother. Jesus was the first perfected person in history, and through his teachings, he revealed much about our proper relationship with the physical world and with material wealth. Jesus taught that we must overcome the fear of death. In John 12:25, he states, "Anyone who loves their life will lose it, while anyone who hates their life in this world will keep it for eternal life." Jesus said in Matthew 6:24, "No one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money." Finally, by overcoming Satan's temptations, Jesus won the victory over the angel, after which Satan was forced to separate from Jesus on an individual level. We're now in the end times, and we can see this played out all around us. All the seeds of history are bearing fruit. God has been working to bring unity between Jacob and Esau on the global level. In South Africa, we saw a white government motivated by wealth and power dominate and exploit the Black majority for years. Nelson Mandela spent more than 2 decades in prison for opposing that unjust regime, but finally became president and united in forgiveness with former President Frederick William de Klerk to achieve a peaceful transition to majority rule. And in North Korea, which is the front line of the materialistic, atheistic, communist world, facing off against the God-centered democratic world, Reverend Sun Myung-moon was severely tortured to the point of death and then imprisoned in a hard labor concentration camp for nearly 3 years under the communist government of Kim Il-sung. However, in 1991, Reverend and Dr. Hak Jae-moon visited North Korea at the risk of their lives and won the heart and lifelong respect and trust of Kim Il-sung by offering great financial support for that nation. Dr. Hak Jae-moon is now 80, and she is absolutely determined to unify Korea. She has set a goal to achieve this by 2025. The Pilgrims represented the fruit of 1,600 years of Jesus's providential efforts and came to America with the dream of establishing a nation where they could freely worship and dedicate everything to God. They manifested Jesus's standard of putting God's vision before material desires at the risk of their lives. Half the party of the Mayflower died in the first winter, many of starvation, rather than touching the grain in the hold of that ship which was reserved for planting the following spring. God made his covenant with those pilgrims and showered unprecedented blessings on America, not just freedom, but incredible wealth. Like Jacob, God entrusted those blessings to America as stewards, as fiduciaries for all other countries. God urgently needs America to awaken to its responsibilities on behalf of the entire world. It's now 400 years since the Pilgrims came to this nation, but tragically, America has lost sight of our responsibility as stewards of God's blessing. We are intoxicated, worshiping the false American dream, which is unlimited opportunity and wealth with little or no responsibility. We've drifted further and further away from God and become more and more seduced by Satan's third temptation. We are now confronted by America's wholesale corruption on many levels, much of it engineered by communism and the institutions it has co-opted. America, on behalf of the world, must now overcome Satan's third temptation. We must wholeheartedly reject the values and corruption currently being forced on us. We must rush back to God and repent, as the prodigal son did. We must reaffirm our first motivation to establish one nation centered on God. Christianity, representing Jesus, must take the lead in this final great awakening, and together we must bring down God's Holy Spirit and bring rebirth to America. When America achieves that substantial rebirth, overcoming Satan's third temptation on behalf of all mankind, at that moment, Satan will be forced to leave the entire world, just as he had to leave Jesus. His power, which is propping up the evil governments and institutions of this world, will quickly dissipate. On that foundation, Satan's kingdoms will crumble. As with the collapse of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the Soviet Union in 1990, great doors will open. The wall came down in Berlin in 1989 and Germany unified in 1990. At that time, West Germany had 62 million people, and East Germany had only 16 million, roughly a quarter. East Germany's per capita GDP was 7,400 euros versus West Germany's 22,700, roughly 1/3. West Germany bought up 94% of the viable corporations in East Germany and laid off millions of East German workers, many of whom ended up on the streets. Women suffered disproportionately. East German industrial production crashed 73%. This time, we must do better. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, their currency was worthless. Overnight, their faltering economy imploded with no hard currency to import desperately needed goods. Shamefully, America refused to lift a finger. Congratulating ourselves on defeating communism, America did virtually nothing to help Russia during this devastating economic crisis. Russia's intelligence mafia stepped into that vacuum and privatized the dysfunctional Russian industrial base into the hands of a few cronies led by Vladimir Putin. This time we must do much, much better. Unlike Germany, where the East population was roughly a quarter of the West's, North Korea's population is roughly half the South's. And whereas East Germany's per capita income was roughly a third of the West's, North Korea's per capita income is only a mere 1/25th of the South's. As happened in Germany, leaving the population of North Korea jobless is not an option. America must lead the world to mobilize vast resources and expertise, actually much larger than in Ukraine, to achieve the economic reunification of Korea. Like Jacob, America was established for this final moment. And unlike Germany, we must not selfishly invest for our own benefit. It must focus on Korea's health and vitality. I firmly believe that the destiny of Korea lies significantly in the hands of America, and that we must first awaken and fulfill our providential responsibility to overcome Satan's third temptation. Then, and only then, spontaneously and joyfully, Korea and the entire world will unite. That is the time we're living in. Praise God.
Man, wow. Thank you. Thank you, Lawrence. Incredible. We're so grateful for your offering of peace and also for your understanding of the history of the providence of God, that this transition from a divided nation to a new, free, and blossoming society with freedom reigns, and freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and all the economic blessings that God will give should flow to all. And it's very sad to hear that when we had the chance to lift Russia up, it wasn't done by America. So that definitely cannot happen again. And that's sad. That's why America's greatness really has been seen when it restored Japan right after World War II, and also Germany. Yep. The different programs, the Marshall Program, and the different things that were done to build up those nations were unbelievable. And because of that, Japan sprung back from totally being devastated and almost laid down to the ground. But also it takes leadership. I remember General Douglas MacArthur was assigned as the commander-in-chief, the supreme commander of the Allied forces, and he remained in Japan, and he became, for a time, the head of Japan under America's rule. And he did something that was so important. He did not remove all the middle-level managers and the mayors and all the city, people with expertise. He did not remove them. He trusted them. And because of that, everything could function. Then he also brought in a new constitution. It wasn't a copy of the American Constitution. Actually, he drew from many different constitutions, and because of that, he really pushed forward for the right to vote for women. And also he brought the educational values of the U.S. school systems at that time into Japan, and Japanese are amazing people. When he landed, people said he can't trust the Japanese, and they said he should have a food taster with him at all times, and he should wear a gun. He said, no, you don't understand the Japanese people. Once they, have made an agreement, they will not change. And they understood that America was not the enemy anymore. That's why that profound thing occurred. So we've got to do that work now to build those bridges of friendship. So thank you with North Korea. And that's why this webinar is important. Our next speaker, Dr. Dale Garrett, also mentioned on our review last night that many times our programs have focused more on the geopolitical, the intelligence evaluations, the military challenges and efforts, and not enough on the kind of cultural exchange that's needed. And so he's going to give us a presentation that's going to help us see more the cultural side of things. Dale is a native of New Mexico and born and raised in Albuquerque. He got his bachelor's and MA degrees in New York and the Master of Divinity at Unification Theological Seminary. He earned a PhD in language, literature, and socio-cultural studies at the University of New Mexico. He has taught at high schools and colleges in South Korea, New England, California, New Mexico, and other areas. While in South Korea, he took students from the secondary level to graduate school, including at Sun Moon University. In the 1980s, Reverend Moon called for an international peace highway to connect all nations. He always taught that service towards others, not the building of military power, is the ultimate way to prevent war. He said the peace road should begin with a peace tunnel built between Japan and South Korea. And they actually began that tunnel. His wife, Dr. Hakchahan Moon, who we know as Mother Moon, has supported that project and even developed it to a larger vision. Dr. Garrett carries that vision forward in his new geopolitical thriller called The Peace Road. It shows that a peace road is a practical way to address the nuclear threat of North Korea. Economic and national security benefits would be immense for Japan, North and South Korea. Dale and his wife, Joy, live in Albuquerque. His wife, Joy, is an elected official as a state representative of the New Mexico House of Representatives. And Dale serves as executive director of the Universal Peace Federation of New Mexico. We're very proud of Dr. Dale Garrett. Welcome, Dale. We're looking forward to this great presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Jenkins. It would be impossible for anyone to live up to that introduction. And thank you for your sharing about the resilience and the strength of the Japanese people. That's something that I'm going to talk about in regards to the peace tunnel that Reverend Moon envisioned between Japan and South Korea, and a key link and a peace road coming from South Korea through North Korea, connecting with China, who has already built the BRI, thousands of miles. And I would just like to thank Lawrence for the great presentation he gave. It was very good insights, important insights into the role of America. I have to say, Archbishop Stallings, you're an amazing person. I've seen you so many times on webinars here, and to actually be with you in person, so to speak, is a great honor. And thank you for that. All right, now, going from what Lawrence said about Mother Moon being 80 years old, it reminds me of Moses. Moses led the people out of Israel across the Red Sea when he was 80 years old. And Mother Moon may very well accomplish an even greater exodus in our time, an exodus from the dominion of communism, a communist country that denies religion, denies God, to a nation that's united, now North and South Korea becoming one united peninsula. Also, Moses is a very good person to study when we're working with the other Abrahamic faiths. Many Christians and Jews don't know this, but the Quran draws lessons from Moses and is an exemplary prophet in quite a few places. Moses' life is also a good example of the fact that God works in more than just one way. God works in a spiritual way. He also works in a very practical way. Moses was raised in Egypt for spiritual reasons, but also practical. Moses learned to read and write when almost nobody in Egypt was able to do that, only the royal family. Moses wrote the first 5 books of the Bible, the Pentateuch. So God works also through economic and political means. Now, these secular dimensions of human life need to be centered on the spiritual values. In the Universal Peace Federation, we call these universally shared values. So it's important to understand that when we talk about external factors like politics, economy, transportation, it doesn't diminish God's work spiritually. It's a reflection of what God is doing on a spiritual level, but it actually enhances God's presence in our lives. I really believe that. There's a Muslim video that I watch celebrating the natural world that God created. I can put it in the chat if anybody wants to know it, but looking at the natural world, we can feel God's love and feel his heart more strongly. Another more recent spiritual leader is Mahatma Gandhi. He was a tremendous leader in Hinduism. He demanded that Hindus respect Muslims when India was being taken away from British rule. So this is a very important political accomplishment by a spiritual leader. And interestingly enough, on Sunday, last Sunday, the G20 leaders paid respect to Gandhi. The Prime Minister of England walked barefoot with the Prime Minister of Indonesia as a way to honor Gandhi's religious beliefs. So politics is important. We can't all be missionaries, but some of us have to be leaders in political fields as well. Now, my wife told me not to say this, but she is a great political leader here in New Mexico. Sorry, honey, I'm going against what you told me. Yesterday, she had a meeting with state leaders, federal leaders, mayor of Albuquerque, other municipalities. They were all talking about how to solve the water crisis in New Mexico, part of the broader water crisis in the Southwest. So these practical issues like water scarcity have to be addressed by politicians, political leaders. Now, I really like what Lauren said about the US and North Korea, but I have to say that we need more than just a bilateral relationship between the US and North Korea or the US and South Korea. The basis for stability, whether it's a chair or a political organization, is 3 legs, not just 2. The trilateral meeting that Biden set up between Japanese Prime Minister Kishida and South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol is very, very important in regard to this. It bodes well for the future. This meeting illustrates the importance of people-to-people dialogue, and that's what this seminar is addressing. So, yeah, I'm not ready for that slide just yet, Tomiko or EJ. That's at the end when I'm talking about the book. But I just want to say, respect makes the world go round because respect is a form of love. In this life, former President Trump accomplished something great when he met with Chairman Kim Jong-un. That was a form of respect. There's a saying, North Koreans don't mind being hated, but they hate being despised. Also, Trump brought about the Abraham Accords between Israel, the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, an incredible accomplishment that those Arab countries could recognize Israel. Now let's take a closer look at North Korea. On Saturday, September 9th, they celebrated the 70th anniversary of the founding of the country. On the 6th, 3 days before that, Chairman Kim launched the first North Korean tactical nuclear attack submarine. Yes, a nuclear submarine. Now, Western and South Korean experts question the operational threat of the sub at this time, but they're only going to improve it. Now, the solution for this is what true parents are all about. Father Moon and Mother Moon have always talked about love as a way to solve the intractable problems of the world. Our Mother Moon celebrated the 70th anniversary of the ceasefire in 1953, the Armistice that ended the horrible killing. But how do we bring an actual peace on the Korean Peninsula? The ever-growing threat of a nuclear attack is not just against the US, of course, it's against Japan and most specifically South Korea. It's reflected in a potentially even more serious war between the US and China. China has more warships than the US Navy, yes, larger than the US Navy. They have very advanced carrier-killer hypersonic missiles. So the solution to these problems was given to us by the prophet Isaiah thousands of years ago. We have to turn our swords into plowshares, our spears into pruning hooks.
Yes.
That's what the Peace Road is. An international peace highway connecting all nations of the world. No transport of soldiers or any military arms will be allowed on the Peace Road. It's absolute must. It also opens up a way for South Korea to love their northern brethren in a very great economic benefit. North Korea has incredible geopolitical abundance in minerals, rare earth metals. Only China has more rare earth minerals than North Korea. Now, just looking at iron, if South Korea bought iron from North Korea, that would be a huge revenue source for North Korea. Then South Korea could make tractors out of that and sell them to North Korea. For the North Koreans are still plowing some of the fields with cattle. So the bilateral trade would be tremendously benefit both countries. And then the third country, the tripod, Japan. We need a peace tunnel between Japan and South Korea. There's two crucial reasons for this. First, economic. This will be a tremendous benefit to the economy of South Korea and Japan. Japan is the third biggest economy. It would be an incredible pathway for Japan to reach the Asian continent through South Korea, North Korea, and to the rest of the world. Billionaire Jim Rogers has supported the peace tunnel. He's actually met with Mother Moon at the place where Japan has begun the tunnel. And Rogers said, we have an amazing chance to actually change the geography of East Asia and ultimately the world. The channel between England and France generates $120 billion in trade every year. That's a lot of billions. It would be even greater for the tunnel between Japan and South Korea, I believe. South Korea's economy is the 10th largest in the world right now. Okay, more importantly than that, it provides political stability for the US, South Korea, and Japan, and ultimately North Korea. The peace tunnel could help dispel the long-standing disrespect and grudge between Korea and Japan. For the sake of their national security against China or other threats in the future, the relationship between Japan, the United States, and South Korea have to be really, really developed. So one thing we have to realize is that long-term economic growth can only take place on the foundation of political peace. The Kaesong Manufacturing Park was built in North Korea as a very important place of trade between North and South Korea. Ultimately, North Korea shooting missiles at that time led to South Korea breaking off the relationship, and the whole thing was dynamited. So we really need a peace road where not just one road, but several roads between South Korea and North Korea can be built. The US can continue to maintain a military presence right now, but that military presence could be reduced as the progress of peace occurs on the peninsula. So that's the conclusion. We need the reunification of the Korean Peninsula. We need a peace tunnel between Korea and Japan. This road has to go ultimately throughout the entire world. Interestingly enough, Senegal has been working to create a road. I'm sorry, it's India. India has just completed plans to have a route to the Middle East from India and also to Europe. This was just presented at the G20 meeting a few days ago. Okay, now I'll ask EJ to put on the slide of the novel. The purpose of the novel is to really promote Reverend Mrs. Moon's Father and Mother's Moon's vision of a road that can unite the world and bring about spiritual, political, and economic peace. So these are the points that I mentioned in the presentation already. If you could go to the next slide of the book. Okay, the little gold dots between Japan and South Korea represent the peace tunnel. That's the approximate route that the tunnel would take place. Mother Moon recently visited an island in the middle, right in the center of that. And yeah, that's really, it's going to be incredibly important. And then the gold dots from the yin yang symbol up to North Korea represent the peace road. Now, I want to say one thing about the book. I'm not trying to just be a best-selling author. I want to be a best reading author. I want to have millions of people read the book. So I encourage you to buy the book if you buy it, then to share it with a friend. They're much more likely to read it if you share your copy with them than just buying one off of Amazon. Also, I'm not fleecing people. I'm getting $2.03 royalty from the Kindle and the paperback at this time. So I'm really offering this with that heart. So
Beautiful.
That's all I have for today. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you, Dale. We're really, really proud of you. I think this is a great, great accomplishment. And I know you've been working on it all the time since we started the Peace Road journey across America. I never forget that. You were so focused. And I think this is a tremendous, tremendous accomplishment. I really like it. I think we should promote it. And even though he doesn't want to, he's not doing this for revenue, but I'd like everybody to buy the book. It's on Amazon right now, and it's selling and it's doing well. You can also get it on Kindle, but this is really an exciting book. So I just began reading it. I'm very encouraged by the spirit of the book. The spirit of the book is bringing peace and understanding that the peace road, and that was quite a shocking statement when Mother Moon and Father Moon in 1982 at the science conference, they announced the Peace Road would be a peace highway connecting Santiago, Chile, all the way up through South America to North America, Central America, North America, go across the Bering Strait, which is unthinkable. But actually, the engineers have now identified that it's totally possible. It's only a 50-mile gap between the two, and there's big islands in the middle, Little Diomede and Big Diomede. It's very possible to build a tunnel and make that work, and then come down through all the way through Russia and China, and then be able to go to Japan on it by car, and then drive up through the Peace Road, down through Africa to the Cape of Good Hope, and then back up through the Middle East and all the way through to Europe to England. So you can drive from New York to England. And I wouldn't take a car with a lot of mileage. I would take a relatively new car, but it's exciting. And one of the key points was that no military vehicles, no weapon transports will be allowed on this Peace Road. And, there's another country doing a thing, a great effort to make the Belt and Road project. It's interesting that those two have been proposed, and certainly the Peace Road of Reverend Moon really supports the exchange of all cultures, and we're really looking forward to that becoming a reality. They did start building the tunnel in Japan, and Mother Moon visited it a couple of years ago, and it's really happening. And because of that effort, it's still in private hands. It's not in the government's hands yet. But without the government really stepping in, no private company can really carry that weight. So we'll need the government of Japan and Korea to cooperate together. But here's one result. When you do what's right, things start to happen that help you. So one gentleman who's a very, very wealthy investor, he's been, a guest speaker on our programs, and he's now the chairman of the IAPD, and he's just a wonderful gentleman. He saw that peace road. He met somebody with the organization of UPF and saw that peace road and completely got convinced that this organization, UPF, Reverend and Mrs. Moon, they really know what they're doing. And he opened up and said he had been to North Korea many times. And he said, you can't imagine the economic revolution that will occur when we go from the South, or from Japan to Korea to North Korea to the rest of the world. 27 million people in North Korea, and they have virtually nothing except for a core of 300,000 people. It's just an economic explosion that will change the dynamics there tremendously. So I'd like to open up for a little discussion between our speakers. We have a few minutes, so we only have a couple minutes, but let's go ahead. Archbishop, what's your commentary on this presentation by Dale and Lawrence? What's
awesome, Dr.
today?
Awesome, Dr. Jenkins. It reminds me that hope springs eternal. And all of us speaking today, you and others on this platform, have been convinced through our filial piety and attendance to true parents that this concept of uniting the global family together by way of a peace road is attainable. I didn't know that Dr. Garrett had written a book on this whole project, The Peace Road, because I've been hearing about it. So I'm excited. I have to go and order the book on Amazon.
It's brand new. And tell us about your book, Bishop.
Oh, Beyond the,
while we're at it.
It's entitled Beyond the Zoom, the Afterlife, which focuses on where is life after we physically die.
Wow.
And so I understand when Garrett said it's not about making the money, because by the times we pay give the sizable discount to retailers and the printers and all that, there's not much left, just crumbs from the table. But it's not about the money; it's about the message.
So to have a peace, we have to understand that we all are going to go to the next world. So we better understand it. When I first heard the title Beyond the Zoom, I thought it was beyond the Zoom call, that one day we'd be liberated.
We've been doing a lot of it.
But no, it's beyond the Zoom of life. Life
That's right.
By.
Yeah.
And suddenly you find yourself in the next world. And
yes.
That's why it's great to have the principles of peace discussed.
Yes.
So also, Lawrence, any comment?
No, I appreciated your comments, Dr. Jenkins, about America's role to, to really invest in and raise up the other countries in the world, like the Marshall Plan, like Japan. I visited Japan and organized a conference with Bill Garrity, who you may know was Reagan Secretary of Commerce. But his dad was on MacArthur's staff. And his dad was responsible for restarting the entire steel industry in China. MacArthur assigned them to do that, and as a result, he was best friends with the president of the Keidanren, and it was just tremendous, deep relationship and heart there, based on that kind of an investment. So,
thank you, Lawrence, and thank you for all your work for peace. South Korea it was more devastated than Japan, honestly speaking. Japan suffered the infinite tragedy of the atomic bombs on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So there's no comparison anywhere in history of that tragedy. But at the same time, Korea was razed to the ground. I mean, literally burnt to the ground. And here, because of America's partnership and support, like what happened with Japan after World War II and also with Germany, America, engaged with full support, and Korea became known as the miracle on the Han River. You drive down the road now and you're going to be lucky to find any American cars because it's all Japanese and Korean. It's Kia and Hyundai and Toyota, Honda, Mitsubishi, Acura, and you do have some BMWs like Bishop Stallings BMW. So Dale, your final comments on peace for North and South Korea and the 70th anniversary of the Armistice.
Well, I really agree with everyone here that the future is bright, and the future will be carried on the shoulders of younger people than me, at any rate. I think I'm the oldest one here, and I just want to share the experience I had back in 1990 with my wife. We were teaching a group of children, second generation unificationists. They were from Europe, from Africa, from America, from Japan. We took a group of them to the DMZ, and in the Quonset hut, there's a taped line going right down the middle. So we were allowed to cross that line because we were a group of students. They said, okay, you kids can go with your teacher, cross the line and stand in North Korea. So that is such a poignant reminder to me that the future lies with youth, and we're excited about that.
Wow.
Well, I really want to thank you all, especially what Bishop Stallings pointed out, that every year at the time of the anniversary of Reverend Moon's passing, Kim Jong-un directly sends a wreath of flowers and a congratulatory letter to both Father Moon and Mother Moon for their work for peace. It's unthinkable. Yeah. Reverend Moon was labeled as the #1 enemy by Pravda and Izvestia, the #1 enemy of the Soviet Union because of his fight against communism. And yet he also was labeled as the #1 enemy of the North. And there were assassins sent down from the North. It was confirmed by the CIA director, both CIA directors, Ambassador Woolsey and also Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, both confirmed the history of those assassins that came down to the South. And yet, even with the assassins coming, they turned to the fundamental principle, love your enemy. They went there with a spirit of peace and love. They went to Hawaii first and prayed away any anger or any accusations, and then went to North Korea. And something happened in that meeting. That's why you never know what can happen in a meeting when somebody comes to the meeting with the sincerity to really benefit the other person in a way that doesn't hurt others. And that bond occurred, and that was amazing. I was sitting next to the former CIA director for Europe and also South Korea for the Northeast Asia when those flowers were presented last August at the 10th anniversary of the passing of Reverend Moon. And he said, Michael, you know what? That's the first message we've had from Kim Jong-un to the whole Western world for 3 years. And that message was only to Reverend and Mrs. Moon about being peacemakers. That's amazing, amazing thing. So thank you all. I'm so grateful for Vice President Tomiko Duggan. She does outstanding work to bring people together. We'll have our interfaith program, IAPD, our regular weekly program at 1 o'clock on Thursday. It's a tremendous experience, and Archbishop Stallings is our master of ceremonies there. It's just a delightful time. And I want to thank everybody again for this time, Dale and Patriarch Stallings and Mr. Lawrence Baer, Dr. Dale Garrett. We never call you doctor. We have to call you Doc. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, just one thing.
Yeah, go ahead. One more thing.
I put in the chat my Gmail. It's peacego.novel@gmail. Please give me your suggestions. I have gotten 100 suggestions on typos, different segues from one chapter to another. this book has really been written with the input of scores of people. So please send me your suggestions or anything there.
Oh, great,
Thank you.
great. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Dr.
thank
Jenkins.
you.
Thank
Thank you very
you,
much, Dr.
Archbishop.
Jenkins.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mrs.
Tomiko.
Mrs.
Take
Duggan.
care, Stallings.
Jay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Garrett. Thank you so much.
Joy,
Yeah,
thank
thank you,
you
sir.
so
Reverend
much for
Bear.
joining us.
Thank
So
you,
we'll
Ted.
see
It's fine.
Archbishop Stallings, see you on Thursday.
On Thursday. Don't meet me there, beat me there.
And Archbishop Stallings, we're all ready to march to Pyongyang, so just name the date.
Thank you, Mrs. Garrett. That's right. Make sure you're right there side by side with your husband, because that will put the seal on the peace road when we march across the 38th parallel and head to Pyongyang. That will do it.
Wonderful. Dr. Gill, I will buy you a book and read it. Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
have your book for you. I have my book for you, Mrs. Tomiko
yeah,
Duggan.
yes, please. Thank you
I
so
will bring
much.
it to you. I'll bring it to you this
Oh,
week.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good afternoon. Thank you
You
so
too.
much.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
God bless.